It is 67 AD, and the Apostle Paul is sitting in the capital prison of the Roman Empire, about to get his head chopped off by order of Emperor Nero. Why? Rome doesn't execute men like this without reason. Only 30 years prior, Paul embarked on the first of 4 adventures that changed the world, each one more dangerous than the last. He went from being a high-ranking bounty hunter from a religious cult to one of the most influential men in history. But to understand why the most powerful man on earth wanted him dead, we have to look at the map and trace the moments Paul decided to run a race that could only end in one place: Rome. As we follow Paul through these 4 adventures, keep this in mind. Every city he visits and every riot he escapes from is just one step closer to the executioner's blade. The answer to why he was so dangerous to the empire is probably not what you've been taught. Starting with adventure number 1, known by the previous name Saul, he was on a single mission: hunt down a new Jewish cult called the Way. These people worshipped a carpenter they claimed had risen from the dead, and Paul was determined to throw them in prison. But on the road to Damascus, a bright light stopped him dead in his tracks. The man hunting this movement just met the man he was fighting. Notice this: the ancient Roman road called Straight is still in Damascus today. It's not just a story. After being healed of blindness on that very street, Paul didn't go to the experts in Jerusalem. He went to the middle of a hot desert in Arabia to talk to Jesus himself. When he finally returned to Damascus and Jerusalem, his old friends, the religious leaders, turned on him. If I were Paul, I'd probably ease them into the whole "I saw the resurrected Jesus" thing. But not Paul. He immediately began to preach boldly to his former colleagues. This infuriated them so much he had to escape by boat to his hometown of Tarsus. What most people don't realize is that Paul was born a Jew with Roman citizenship. At the time, the emperor was called Divi Filios, the Son of God. The Jews had a special pass to worship their own God, but Paul was preaching that Jesus was the true Son of God. This wasn't just a religious shift, it was a political declaration of war against the emperor. Adventure number 2 begins in Antioch, where the followers of Jesus were first called Christians. You can still see St. Peter's Cave today, full of tunnels perfect for hiding from those who wanted to attack them. Paul and Barnabas then set sail for this strange island of Cyprus. Check this out. An inscription was found on Cyprus with the name Sergius Paulus, identifying him as governor in the exact year Paul arrived. When a sorcerer tried to stop Paul from preaching to the governor, Paul told him he was the son of the devil, and a dark mist fell on that man's eyes. But things were about to get much more dangerous. In the region of Galatia, the team reached a city filled with retired Roman soldiers who were Roman fanatics. When Paul told them the man Rome crucified was actually the king of the world, the Jews stirred up the people to stone Paul to death. In Lystra, it got even weirder. After Paul healed a crippled man, the locals thought Paul and Barnabas were the Greek gods Zeus and Hermes returning to the earth. They even tried sacrificing an ox for them. But when the mood shifted, they stoned Paul half to death and dragged him out of the city. Miraculously, Paul got right back up. And get this, he went right back into the city the next day. They leave him for dead, and he walks right back in. But why? Was he an adrenaline junkie? Not quite. Paul was strengthening the souls of the disciples. It's not until his next adventure that we begin to see why the emperor wanted his head. The floodgates for the gospel were officially open to the non-Jewish world now. Paul eventually landed in Philippi, where he had the craziest week of his life. Here are the ruins of the city today, including ancient toilets where people did their business while trying to avoid rats biting their you-know-what. Paul didn't care about social norms. He went directly to where the women gathered and converted a wealthy royalty seller named Lydia. Then he cast a demon out of a slave girl, which cost him big time because her owners were using her for fortune-telling profits. Paul and his companion Silas were flogged and thrown into prison. What would you do if an earthquake shook your prison doors open? I'd get the heck out of there. But Paul stayed to save the life of one Greek guard. The doors open, but Paul doesn't leave. He was shattering barriers between Jew and Greek, slave and free, male and female. Next stop, Athens, home of Plato and Socrates. Everywhere Paul turned, he saw idols. He was brought before the highest court on Mars Hill, a mountain of marble you can still stand on today. He noticed an altar to an unknown god, which had been built 500 years earlier after a miracle involving hungry sheep. Paul used their own history to tell them who the real God is. Then came Ephesus, the New York of the ancient world. Paul stayed there for 3 years, and his message was so successful, the idol shops were losing business fast. A silversmith named Demetrius incited a riot in the Great Theater, which is still preserved today, where the crowd shouted for 2 hours, "Great is Diana of Ephesians." Paul fought with beasts in that theater and was eventually imprisoned in chains. Now we reach the fourth and final adventure. A new emperor had risen to power, Nero. Paul began to retrace his steps, knowing that what the Holy Spirit had shown him, he would be thrown in a prison in Jerusalem. His friends pleaded with him not to go, but Paul made a bold statement. "None of these things move me, so that I may finish my race with joy." In Jerusalem, he was falsely accused of bringing non-Jews into the temple. Archaeologists have actually found the warning signs telling non-Jews to stay out. After a mob attack and 2 years in prison, Paul did something most Roman citizens would never dare to do. He asked to stand trial before Emperor Nero himself. It was essentially a death sentence. On the way to Rome, his ship crash-landed on the island of Malta during a massive storm. While warming himself by a fire, a poisonous snake jumped out and bit Paul's hand. The natives waited for him to drop dead, but when he didn't, they hailed him as a false god. Paul finally entered Rome through the Porta Cappa. He was placed on house arrest for 2 years until the Great Fire of Rome broke out. Nero, becoming a total tyrant, blamed the fire on the Christians. Paul finally stood trial before Nero and no doubt preached the gospel to this evil man, sharing how he too used to be a persecutor. Nero rejected the message and sentenced Paul to be beheaded. He knew where this road was going to end, and he decided to walk it anyway. Nero presented this mercy only because Paul was a Roman citizen. As he waited in his cell, Paul wrote his final words: "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." Paul's name literally meant small, but he ended up standing toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful men on earth. He didn't just survive shipwrecks, riots, and snake bites. He finished the exact race God calls each and every one of us to run. Today, Athens and Rome bear his mark because he chose to run the race straight into the loving arms of Jesus, no matter what the cost. Paul finished his race. The question is, what are you going to do with yours?